I am Clara, 35
Follow
years
us at
old this year.
revengefiles.com.
Looking at the business I have now, a lovely and successful B&B bed and breakfast in a small tourist town. Few would know that I once went through a period of struggle so severe I thought I couldn't recover. And during those darkest days, there was a man who dealt me a fatal blow, a debt I will never forget. The story began 8 years ago, 3 months after I had just opened this inn. It was my passion, all my capital, and my dream. But starting a business is never easy, and I had to struggle for every penny to keep it running. During that period, my life was a complete mess. My father had just passed away after a long battle with illness, and I had to shoulder the responsibility of caring for my grieving mother. On top of that, my wedding was only 2 months away, with so many costs to cover. In the midst of these overwhelming difficulties, a ray of hope appeared. A man named Richard, the owner of a construction company, contacted me. He had a contract in the area and needed a place to provide food and lodging for a group of his workers for 6 days. The contract included dinner, beds, and breakfast for the whole group. It was a large contract, an amount of money that could help me solve many of my immediate problems. I desperately needed that money. Richard said he needed to add me to the company's payment system, so he proposed to pay the entire cost on Friday. Although I was a bit hesitant, I agreed because I needed the money so badly and trusted his respectable appearance. For those 6 days, I served them as attentively as possible. I cooked hearty meals, cleaned the room spotlessly, and ensured they had a comfortable place to rest after long hours of hard work. Richard and his crew seemed very satisfied. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Then, on Thursday night, in the early hours of Friday, they vanished. They left in the middle of the night without a word of goodbye, without a single penny of payment. That morning, when I arrived to prepare breakfast, I only found empty rooms, messy beds, and a terrifying silence. My heart felt like it stopped. I tried to call Richard, but his phone was unreachable. For the next 6 months, I tried to get that money back from Richard. The first tried every way to contact him, from calling, emailing, to texting. Sometimes he would answer, making empty promises to pay next week, next month. But then nothing ever happened. Gradually, he stopped answering messages or picking up the phone. The consequences of not being paid were terrible. I was unable to pay several important bills. The electricity, water, and food supply bills for the B&B all piled up. To cover the wedding expenses and care for my mother, I had to borrow money. That debt, combined with my existing financial difficulties, weighed heavily on my shoulders for many years. It took me a very long time to pay off all the debt, because we struggled so much during that period. The feeling of being deceived, of being taken advantage of when I was at the bottom of despair, was something impossible to swallow. Richard didn't just take my money, he took my faith in people, pushing me and my family into a dire situation. My wedding took place amidst anxiety and the burden of debt. My mother, instead of being comforted after the pain of losing her husband, had to watch her daughter struggle with hardship. I will never forget the man who ruthlessly kicked me when I was at the lowest point of my life. Follow us at revengefiles.com. Time passed, and my business gradually stabilized and grew. I worked hard, paid off all my debts, and now I make a good amount of money. But wealth did not make me forget the debt from years ago. The anger and resentment for Richard still smoldered within me, and I decided he would have to pay, not with money, but with his peace. For the next 8 years, I made Richard's life a living hell. I started with middle-of-the-night calls from a private number. I set alarms for odd hours, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., just to call him and wake him from his sleep. On nights when I woke up to use the restroom, I would also pick up my phone and call him repeatedly until he had to disconnect his phone number. But that was just the beginning. I signed up Richard's phone number and email for every spam, scam, and pornographic website I could find. His inbox and phone must have been flooded with junk messages and unwanted calls. I didn't stop there. I went online and wrote terrible reviews about Richard and his company using his full name and business name. I spread those articles across forums and review sites until I heard news that his company had to shut down. On Facebook, whenever Richard posted a new picture, I would comment that he was a thief, a scammer. I did this continuously until he had to set his personal profile to private. When that happened, I switched to a new tactic. I started messaging his friends, one by one, telling them the story of how he had scammed me. I messaged everyone on his friends list. Richard's business was located in another city. I went on Google, researched the area, and called all the neighbors around his shop. I made up a story, telling them that Richard was selling drugs right out of his shop. I knew this was a low blow, but I didn't care. He had pushed me into a corner, and I would make sure he had no way out. I am pretty sure that the damages I caused him were far greater than the amount of money he still owed me. I took his peace, his reputation, and his business. That was the price he had to pay for callously taking advantage of a woman in a difficult situation.
Follow us at revengefiles.com.
Now, my business is strong and I make a lot of money. My life is so much better. But I will never forget Richard, the man who kicked me when I was at the lowest point of my life. My revenge may have been long and somewhat extreme, but it was the only way I could release the resentment I had suppressed for so many years. It wasn't just about the money, it was about justice. It's a reminder to myself that, even if I fall, I can still get up and fight for what I deserve. That debt now has been paid in full, not with money, but with the suffering and failure of the one who caused it.